Morning. I'm Robert Herr, United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. I'm here today to announce the unsealing of the federal charges filed against former Maryland State Delegate Cheryl Glenn of honest services wire fraud and bribery. I'm joined today by Derek Hines and Leo Wise, the Assistant United States Attorneys working with the FBI on this matter. As I said only a month ago, when announcing the indictment of former Baltimore City Mayor Catherine Pugh, there are many victims in public corruption cases like this one. The victims are all of us, the taxpayers, the people of Ms. Glenn's district, indeed all Marylanders who are represented in the General Assembly. All of us expect and deserve integrity from our public officials. The people of Maryland expect, and they should expect, that elected officials placed the interests of their citizens above their own. Unfortunately, the allegations in the charging document unsealed today show that Ms. Glenn betrayed that public trust. As set forth in the charges, and as I'll talk more about shortly, Ms. Glenn allegedly solicited and received bribes to introduce and support legislation relating to marijuana, opioids, and alcohol. These substances affect the health, safety, and well-being of thousands of Marylanders every day. They are at the center of some of the most heated and urgent debates in our society about how best to balance the benefits of these substances with the risks. So decisions about these issues and legislation about these issues are matters of life and death. Such decisions and votes need to be based on careful analysis and deliberation about which solutions will help keep Marylanders safe and healthy. These decisions cannot be made on the basis of who is the highest bidder. Until last week, Ms. Glenn served as a delegate in the Maryland House of Delegates. She represented District 45, which covers portions of Baltimore City. According to the criminal information unsealed today, from at least March 4th, 2018 through February 11th, 2019, Ms. Glenn defrauded the citizens of Maryland of the right to her honest services by soliciting and accepting bribes in exchange for her official actions. Specifically, the information alleges that Ms. Glenn accepted $33,750 in bribes in exchange for, 1, voting in favor of a bill to increase the number of medical marijuana grower and processing licenses that were available to an out-of-state company, 2, promising to lead the effort to change the law in order to provide a preference for Maryland residency to in-state medical marijuana license applicants, 3, introducing legislation that decreased the number of years of experience required to be a medical director of an opioid maintenance therapy clinic, and 4, introducing legislation that created a Class B alcohol and liquor license in her own district. I'll address each of these in turn. First, with respect to the medical marijuana legislation. As detailed in the criminal information, after a meeting on March 5th, 2018, with several others, Ms. Glenn agreed to use her position as an elected state official to vote for a bill that could favor a company in its pursuit of a medical marijuana license in Maryland in exchange for $3,000 in cash. Ms. Glenn later voted for the bill. The bill passed, and on April 20th, 2018, Ms. Glenn received $3,000 in cash during a meeting at a restaurant in Baltimore. This was the first of 5 bribe payments she allegedly received. On June 7, 2018, Ms. Glenn met with a business person at a restaurant in Baltimore to discuss medical marijuana issues. During the conversation, Ms. Glenn allegedly said that people had asked her how a medical marijuana, without any high-priced lobbyists, had been awarded a marijuana growing license. Ms. Glenn allegedly responded, "They know God and Cheryl Glenn." A few weeks later, Ms. Glenn followed up to see if the business person she'd met with was looking for Ms. Glenn to help him or something. Upon learning that the business person did want Ms. Glenn's help, Ms. Glenn allegedly asked, quote, "Is he going to be making a donation or something?" End quote. On August 10, 2018, an associate of Ms. Glenn's told her that the business person had offered $10,000 to get Maryland law changed so that local businesses would be given priority for medical marijuana licenses. The associate offered to split the $10,000 with Ms. Glenn, who agreed to introduce legislation to get Maryland law changed in exchange for a payment of $5,000. In order to get the business person to make the $10,000 payment, Ms. Glenn allegedly sent an email pledging to take the lead in an effort to get the law changed so that Maryland residents received a preference for medical marijuana licenses. On August 23, 2018, Ms. Glenn received $5,000 in cash during a meeting at a Baltimore restaurant, the second bribe payment she allegedly received. On the subject of opioids, the criminal information further alleges that on October 18, 2018, Ms. Glenn proposed legislation to reduce the required experience for medical directors at opioid maintenance therapy clinics in order to receive another $5,000 payment from the business person. Maryland law requires directors of these clinics to have 3 years of experience. Ms. Glenn sponsored legislation that would have reduced the level of experience to 2. At a meeting in a restaurant in Baltimore, Ms. Glenn accepted a payment of $5,000 in cash, the third bribe payment she allegedly received. With respect to the liquor license, Ms. Glenn also allegedly agreed to introduce legislation to obtain a liquor license for a restaurant that the business person wanted to open in Ms. Glenn's district, in exchange for $20,000, with an initial payment of $5,000 to be made up front and the remaining $15,000 payment when the legislation was introduced. According to the criminal information unsealed today, Ms. Glenn received a fourth bribe payment of $5,000 on December 10, 2018. On January 28, 2019, Ms. Glenn introduced the bill to obtain the liquor license. On February 11, 2019, she allegedly received a bribe payment of $15,000, the fifth and final bribe payment. In addition to these actions, Ms. Glenn allegedly took steps to conceal her illegal activities, including agreeing not to deposit bribe payments into her bank account, agreeing to meet in person to discuss the details of bribes rather than discussing them over the phone, and creating a false loan note for the $15,000 bribe payment, falsely stating that the money was a gift and was in no way connected to her position as an elected state delegate. If convicted, Ms. Glenn faces up to 20 years in federal prison for honest services wire fraud and up to 5 years in federal prison for the bribery charge. Ms. Glenn is scheduled for an initial appearance and arraignment in United States District Court in Baltimore before U.S. District Judge Catherine Blake on January 22, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. Ms. Glenn will self-surrender to the United States Marshals before then. Public office is a privilege. It comes with many rewards, especially the satisfaction of working to make life better for our neighbors, for our cities, and for our entire state. In exchange for those rewards, office holders owe their very best and most principled efforts to the people who voted them into office. This means that the rewards of public office cannot include personal enrichment through the taking of bribes. The community can be sure that dedicated investigators and prosecutors will continue to be on the lookout for evidence of fraud and corruption and follow it wherever the facts may lead. Investigations like this one take time and dedication and a lot of hard work, and I'm very grateful to the talented and professional team at the FBI for their efforts in this case. I'm also very proud of Assistant U.S. Attorneys Derek Hines and Leo Wise, who've handled this matter with skill and judgment. Just a reminder, a criminal information is not a finding of guilt. An individual charged by information is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty at some later criminal proceeding. Be happy to take your questions at this point.
It seems as though you had cooperating associates of Ms. Glenn. Can you describe the extent to which you used wire to record conversations of Ms. Glenn? It seems like you did. And also whether or not any of her associates or the people on the other side of these deals face any charges?
Yeah. Very good questions. At this point, Ms. Glenn is charged by information. There's more in the criminal process to come, and those are questions that I certainly understand your interest in, but I can't address those at this time.
Many of the marijuana grower companies operate in more than one state, and they're trying to expand. I'm wondering if you have been in contact with other jurisdictions where this particular company operates.
Again, it's a good question, but not one that I can answer at this point in the criminal proceedings.
Why organization require, or the business require legislation to get a liquor license? What was that about?
Well, again, at this point, I'm limited to being able to comment on exactly what is in the four corners of the criminal information, and what the information alleges at this point is that that was a request made by the business person in order to receive the liquor license in Ms. Glenn's district. Yes, sir.
Is there video or photographs of the cash exchange in the restaurant?
So there's more to the criminal process, as I've said previously, and we look forward to presenting more information in court. But at this point, this is the first step in the process in terms of the criminal charging document, and we look forward to presenting more in court.
Was there any connection in your investigation to the Pew investigation, or are these two completely separate processes?
Yeah. Again, I'm limited in what I can comment on about this this particular case within the four corners of the indictment. But with respect to your question you're raising of the Pew investigation, this was the two matters, announcements in the two matters do fall within a relatively short period of time. And again, I want to repeat my reassurance to the public that public corruption is something that the FBI and my office take very, very seriously. In fact, I have, because public corruption is a priority of this office's, I have increased the number of prosecutors who are looking at these sorts of matters. So I hope that can bring some assurance to the public that when evidence of this kind of conduct comes to light, we are going to be pursuing it very diligently.
Is there any connection between this case and the corruption case in Prince George's County involving the lawmakers that also dealt with liquor licenses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you're referencing our prosecution of Ms. Tawana Gaines, who was an elected state legislator in Prince George's County as well. And that's another example of an important public corruption matter that my office has brought this year in conjunction with the FBI. And at this point, with respect to any potential connections, I don't have any comment on that at this point.
When Glenn was working on the medical marijuana bills, a lot of what she was talking about and pushing, and for the reasons for doing the bills, was because of making the medical marijuana industry more diverse. Was that, do you think, a facade to cover up for, I guess, you know, obviously she would to do this for money, or do you think the money was, you know, a side, you know, she was pushing these bills anyways, and decided, hey, I can also make some money off of it?
Yeah, I understand the question. That's something that I have to leave it, frankly, to Ms. Glenn and her counsel to comment on at this point. Again, what I'm able to comment on is limited to the charging document.
Can you give me a sense of how long this investigation, how long ago it started?
Yeah.
And it seemed like it was stamped on the 23rd. Indictment?
Yeah.
You know, reason for the timing?
Sure. So the time period charged in the charging document starts back in March of 2018, and so that's the beginning date of the series of bribe payments that the FBI looked into and investigated. So that's the limit of what I'm able to comment on at this point.
How did you become aware something was going on, allegedly?
Yeah, great question, and one I'm often asked, but again, at this point, I'm not able to address that particular issue.
When you announced Delegate Gaines, you announced the plea and the charges all in one, right? So this is, if my memory is right, this is different because it looks like this is going to trial, and so if there were plea discussions, they didn't lead anywhere.
Yeah.
They didn't lead to a deal.
Yeah. I think your recollection is correct with respect to Ms. Gaines. At this point, though, with respect to Ms. Glenn, our announcement is limited to the unsealing of the criminal information. The initial appearance and the arraignment, which are the next steps in the criminal process, are scheduled for late January of next year. And of course, Ms. Glenn has the right, the constitutional right, to contest her charges and to plead not guilty. And as I said earlier, under our criminal justice system, she is presumed innocent until proven guilty. So that's where we are in the criminal process.
Do you want to speak to the seriousness of public corruption and the fact that it's sort of a two-way street, right? We've had a lot of corruption cases in Baltimore come out. The public officials have been the ones to face charges, but you know, there's a lot of talk of quid pro quo these days, and obviously it takes two to tango on a bribery case. So can you speak to that being a lingering question in a lot of people's minds in Baltimore? What about the guys who are on the other side of the coin here?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right in terms of the importance of public corruption cases, and I hope that our work this year with respect to the Pew matter, the Gaines matter, and now the Glenn matter show the seriousness with which we view and prosecute this type of conduct. You know, you use the phrase "it takes two to tango," and by that I assume you're referencing to the fact that when public officials are accepting bribes, there are people who are extending bribes or offering bribes. So our view is, of course, we're concerned with both sides of the transaction, and we are determined to hold accountable people on both sides of those types of exchanges.
Mr. Hurt, can you give us your reaction when you see the alleged conversations laid out in the indictment speak so it seems very directly on give me this? All right. How often do you see that? I mean, oftentimes we see public officials kind of talk around these types of asks. It seems like in the indictment there were very specific asks for her actions.
Yeah, again, at this point, I hesitate to characterize the evidence as it's laid out in the criminal information. In my view, and especially at these points in the criminal process, we let the evidence speak for itself. So, but what I will say is that the detail and the thoroughness of the evidence that's been laid out in the criminal information is a testament to the skill of the FBI investigators who are involved in this matter, as well as to the prosecutors in my office, of whose work I'm extraordinarily proud.
If I may ask, just following up to what you answered the previous question.
Yes.
You said you are concerned with both sides of the transaction. Should we then expect possible charges against the associates in this particular case, like the marijuana company?
Yeah. So at this point, you know, I'm limited in what I can say. It's Justice Department policy not to comment on, in any sort of way, a pending investigation. So all I can talk about today is what's laid out in the charging document that was unsealed today.
Would you say the volume of corruption charges is the result of a focus on your office, or is this just low-hanging fruit at this point?
I think what I can say safely is that we take it extraordinarily seriously, and when there is evidence that comes to light of this office and the FBI, we will see it through and follow it wherever it may lead. As for the volume, I don't want to comment, and I don't think I'm able to comment at this point on what else that betrays, other than the fact that we take that sort of conduct and public corruption generally very, very seriously.
And just to clarify,
Yes.
on the question that I asked earlier, there were about two state lawmakers who were charged with bribery about 2 years ago, and I wondered whether this was in connection to that. In those cases, there were Prince George's County lawmakers, and they were, the cases involved liquor licenses as well, and I just wondered whether this was in connection to that, any kind of connection at all.
Yeah, you're exactly right that liquor licenses were at issue in that series of prosecutions in Prince George's County, and it's at issue here in Ms. Glenn's case as well. But beyond the very fact of that being an issue and within the four corners of the charging document in Ms. Glenn's case, I really can't comment at this time. But we do look forward to presenting more information as this case continues through the criminal justice process in federal court.
When is Glenn supposed to turn herself in?
I believe the arraignment is January 22nd of 2020 at 2:30 p.m. here in Baltimore.
Do you have any concern that she may, go on the run or something like that before then? We've got like a month between that time.
Yeah, I don't have any comment on that. It's our understanding that she will self-surrender to the U.S. Marshals before that date.
Beyond the indictment, we were here during last week. We heard 3 different announcements trying to address violent crime in Baltimore. 2 of them involved your office. Any concerns? I mean, following the extremely violent weekend that we had with what was 7 people killed?
Yes, so it was the events of the weekend, of course, concerned every single person who's part of the law enforcement team here who wants to make Baltimore a safer city. And it's my hope that the types of announcements that we made last week relating to a surge in the number of federal law enforcement personnel dedicated to Baltimore here, as well as the amount of money, the federal funds that are going to be directed to help the Baltimore Police Department. It's my hope that those results will come quickly, and we'll quickly see results early in 2020 as to a reduction of violent crime. But Commissioner Harrison and State's Attorney Mosby and myself and Attorney General Frosch, we are all extraordinarily dedicated, and we devote an enormous amount of energy and time working with each other and thinking about how we can begin to get control of the violence here in Baltimore City. And it's something we spend a lot of time speaking with each other and figuring out how we can increase teamwork-oriented results to get Baltimore residents a safer city.
Was Ms. Glenn's resignation part of some sort of negotiation in this case? Was it something you had asked for?
I can't comment on that, just the fact that, beyond the mere fact that she did resign her position last week.
Here's a question. I'm not sure if it's a good question or not, but one of these measures, the House Bill 2 that passed.
Yes.
Since she allegedly was involved in some bribery and the bill passed, will that have any impact on the future of that bill or law?
Yeah, that's not something I can comment on at this point.
Can you identify the Annapolis hotel?
I cannot.
How fast she was going?
I cannot. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.